another wonderful week. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Jamie Danielson of Kaion Fitness. And if you are new to my channel, we cover everything relating to lifestyle, health, and nutrition so that you can find everything you need in one channel. Today we are talking to Dr. Christina Migliara. She has her bachelor's degree in psychology earned from the University of Florida. She has a master's in marriage and family therapy. She has a doctorate in psychology. She is the jack of all trades. She's been in practice over 10 years, worked in and outpatient addiction facilities. She's worked for a number of non-for-profits. She served as the department of head in psychology for a higher education facility. And she currently is practicing at Coastwise Medication and Therapy at the Elite Wellness Center in Jacksonville, Florida. She is a coach at CrossFit Tailwinds. She is an awesome mom, an awesome friend, does everything. I feel stressed out just going through all of your credentials.
No.
You're like the hardest working person and the busiest person I think that I know on this planet. So thank you for giving us the time and doing this interview with us.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
I think right now it's so important. I was telling you earlier that I've been talking to so many moms, and the topic of stress and anxiety is coming up over and over and over again. And during these kind of uncertain times, and I know 2020 has just been strange for all of us, this is a topic that I think needs to be discussed. Just how do we manage the stress and anxiety? How do we identify it? So there's so much to cover here. So let's start off by kind of starting from the very beginning. I know that stress and anxiety can kind of manifest itself in ways that we might not really even know or be able to identify, right? So how do we begin to identify that within ourselves?
Good question. So the most important thing is to kind of get to know your body. A lot of times stress and anxiety manifests itself physically. So we've got that physiological response. And I think it's important to know the difference between what is just a normal stress response, normal maybe feeling of being nervous versus prolonged stress and anxiety. And so if we're talking about specifically what's going on in today with the effects of the pandemic, what you have seen is a rapid amount of change in a short amount of time. And so a lot of people, basically everyone, has gone into this adaptive mode, survival mode, where we've had to adjust and adapt to the various changes that have been put at us. And what has been challenging about that is we're used to having a little bit of time to process and think a little bit more methodically, a slightly bit more of predictability and control, and then we can respond accordingly, and that has pretty much gone out the window. So we've literally gone right into what some of that instinctual survival mode has been, that evolutionary response. And so everyone's amygdalas are firing left and right and constantly, and we are not made to do that for prolonged periods of time. Mm-hmm. And so I think what happens is you have a stress response, your body catches up with the fact that, you're detecting threat, and then you have to make a change and go, which, most people have done a great job with it. And I think that we are probably harder on ourselves than we need to be.
Right.
We've adapted pretty well. We've made it work. We jumped into parenting our kids and teachers and, become all different types of roles very quickly. And so I think the most important thing is just to be a little bit gentle on yourself and know that, you are doing the best that you can and having that dialogue with yourself. So if you find yourself in a moment where you are thinking negatively, if you're finding that those negative thoughts are going on a little bit longer than, just a moment, you're finding yourself having days of that. You're finding yourself not feeling like you want to get out of bed. You're finding that you are lacking motivation to do the things that you normally would do, despite some of the restrictions being lifted, or even just finding ways to accomplish those things within the confines of being within your home and your own environment. Finding things like food and alcohol as a form of a coping tool, as opposed to using food as fuel, and avoiding alcohol and doing some of your daily routine pieces that we know promote health and wellness. If you're finding yourself moving to that, on edge, right, snapping at your kids, at your loved ones, jumpy, being very just skittish. If you're finding you're having intrusive thoughts, these are all responses to this type of stress that you might find manifesting. Pain. People find pain because when you're tense, you clench. You might clench your fists. You might, the shoulders roll forward and tighten. You might find, pain in your back, your neck. That scowl when you're constantly really like thinking and stressed out. So those kinds of things, we will respond in that way as well.
Right. You brought up a lot of really great things just in that first piece, and I think you're right in that, kind of to break some of that apart. Moms, I think, even more so, pick themselves apart, put themselves last, and are so susceptible to having that mom guilt. And in your opinion, does that kind of lead into the stress, and part of the anxiety is that we have so many guilty thoughts, or thoughts of guilt when it comes to our children? And are we doing enough, or are we giving enough time to our children, and giving enough time to our husbands or our spouses, our partners? Are we enough?
Yeah, that's been a conversation I've had a lot lately with a lot of my clients, and just people in general. And what we're finding now, so we're sort of several months into this pandemic, and how we're behaving, how we're responding now is very different than how we first responded. So while you may still see a lot of what I just kind of went through existing now, what you're also starting to see is the shift from the survivor mode and all those feelings to a feeling of numb. And I've talked to a lot of moms specifically who are feeling this, where they're feeling numb, they're feeling nothing. They're just kind of in this
existing mode.
Exactly. And they're just kind of existing, and it's a very odd place to be. Now, yes, to some degree, that feeling is a defense mechanism, and it is a piece of that survivorship that we do need, but that can also be very detrimental to us. So I think what's really important, to go to your question, is, are we enough? Those feelings of shame and guilt that perpetuate that negative cycle in our minds. It's really counterproductive to think, let me put myself last and put everyone first. And I'm having this conversation a lot, because I've talked to some people. These are like new moms, people thinking about being moms, current moms, you name it.
Right.
And they're all worried that, well, I have to, give to everything and everyone and then me. And that could not be further from the truth.
Right.
It really is so counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish and being successful and being well and trying to make everyone happy by putting yourself last.
Right. Because if you're not well, you can't really essentially be able to give to others and take care of anything else.
Exactly.
Well, yourself, right?
We call that the empty cup syndrome.
Yes.
In other words, you have a cup, everyone has a cup, and you're trying to share that with everyone else, but it's got holes in it, and you've got nothing in it. And every time you try to give it, it's like, well, there's nothing there. So you can't be in a place to give if you're not giving to yourself.
True.
So the best thing that you can do is put yourself first. And everyone's like, oh my God, that is so selfish of you. No, it is not. It is actually the best thing that you can do. It's the most important thing that you can do. Taking care of yourself. So being able to go through and figure out, what do I need? Because it's different for everyone.
Right.
And you've got to figure out what fills my cup. What do I need? What are my outlets? Do I need alone time? Do I need to exercise? Do I need, to go get a pedicure? Do I need to, and all this stuff obviously is relative to where you are, I think, in the country, because everybody is different in terms of what they can do right now. And so you've got to figure out what you can do with what you've got, going on for your particular area right now, but you've got to do something. And as soon as you can get back in that routine of taking care of self, then it becomes so much easier and so much better of an experience for you to give to everyone else. And you'll find that there's not much more you have to do that's very effortful.
Right.
It's just naturally going to fall into place. So you're going to find yourself being productive at work. You're going to find yourself, being in a better mood to want to be around your kids, then you're not going to snap at them. It's going to be easier to have patience and manage their behavior even in these difficult times. You and your partner are now working as a team instead of getting defensive and working against each other because you're not on edge and overthinking about what somebody is saying, getting upset about it and reactive. You become much more responsive, and it's a lot easier for you to look around, process, and go, okay, here's what I'm going to do here, here's what I'm going to do there. You can sit back and you can breathe a little bit. And so
that's something that I think we all need to do.
Don't forget to breathe.
Right.
I'm telling you, just stop and don't forget to breathe.
Take a moment to breathe.
Take a moment. A few moments.
Yes.
One of my big things is frequent breaks. Like when I tell my clients, you've got to be taking frequent breaks throughout the day. You can't just be grinding away.
Right.
Stop. Go outside. Take some fresh air. Look around. Get a little bit of sunshine. And then go back.
I like that.
You've got to take frequent breaks.
I like that. And sometimes it's harder to do. You really have to be intentional about pulling yourself away.
Sure.
Because if you don't, you just get into the routine of, like you just said, grinding it out all day. And
hours have gone by. I get it. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. You're in a project and you're like, oh, I can't get away from this. I only have so much time. But honestly, it's those frequent breaks that I have found, if you just step out for 10, 15 minutes, take some fresh air, just allow your brain to have like a moment. You can actually kind of pick up a few new things that you weren't maybe considering because you were just grinding away, and you're like, oh my God. That
gives you that mental clarity, just that break.
Yeah. Maybe something comes to mind that you need for the project you were working on, and you're able to go back and like really do something that you hadn't thought of that maybe you wouldn't have thought of if you hadn't taken that break. Right. So trust your body, listen to your body, listen to your gut, take the break. Don't just push through and ignore things. Don't forget to eat, don't forget to sleep. These things are so important, and it sounds like common sense, and a lot of them are. And a lot of the things that I'll just specifically start off with when I'm working with someone is say, look at these 5 things. There's like 5 general things. Are you doing them, and are you doing them to the extent that you should be? And if you're not, let's focus on that. And just that alone, that reset button gets people to the point where they make a tremendous difference in their mental health and well-being. And they can start to then become at a place where okay, now we can tap into some of the other pieces that you really want to talk about. Some of the more deeper pieces related to family issues or relationships or whatever it is that you're really coming to therapy for. But we can't even do that if you can't allow yourself to just calm down. Like you're not able to think and process what I'm saying. Your mind's just going.
Yeah, I like that's great advice. You also mentioned kind of getting the stress and anxiety manifesting itself in some negative ways, like eating comfort food or resorting to alcohol and maybe over drinking. And I have heard a lot of my friends saying, we find ourselves drinking a lot more wine at night than we did before. And I think that is part of that coping mechanism that you just spoke of. It can be food. It can be, I don't know, there's a lot of different outlets. Can you speak to that and how we can work to better manage that and kind of pull ourselves away from that, find maybe some other healthier alternatives?
Sure. And I think a lot of that comes with boredom. People are bored or they are, nervous, some of those other pieces that you mentioned. And so it's about having a healthy relationship with these things. So it just depends. Like if you're prone to addiction, then obviously using alcohol, you have to be careful about that because then that brings you down a slippery slope. If you're somebody who socially drinks and that's just something you enjoy, then again, being mindful that it doesn't tip to the other side. So making sure that you create routine and structure. So a lot of people are like, well, I'm home, I have nothing else to do. That's why they find themselves frequently going to the refrigerator. Right. Let's drink, let's eat. I would say create the same type of routine and structure that you have if you weren't in this situation now. Right. You can easily create a schedule for yourself and make yourself a little bit more regimented. And it's great if you have people in your household or if you have friends, even if they're not living with you, that you can at least communicate with, call those accountability partners or buddies, so that you can kind of keep yourself on track. Right. And that way you fill your time with things that are constructive. So maybe it's a project, maybe it's work, maybe it's exercise, those breaks that we talked about, and literally plan out your day. I mean, what would you do if you were going into your office, if you were going back to your daily life? You would have a structure, you would have a routine. And so just because your environment has changed doesn't mean that your lifestyle should change that dramatically. Like, you can make adaptations to fit that and still create a very structured day. And that will keep you from just mindlessly feeling like you can, you know, just eat and graze or to drink. And you're not even thinking about it sometimes. It's just an unconscious behavior that you develop. So routine and structure would be a really great way. And I would say get an accountability partner or buddy that can kind of keep you on track.